most of the coaches I meet, they just want the best people and the high character athletes. There's a coach that I've talked to that has extremely talented athletes, and her feedback was, "I can teach talent. I this is what I do, but give me the gym rat, give me the kid that is gonna show up and to open gyms, give me the kid that's gonna work hard, and I'll do the rest."
Welcome to today's episode of the Here for Cheer podcast. I'm your host, Megan Gomarlo, and today's guest is Les Malanowski. He is a former University of Iowa cheerleader. He has been in the coaching industry with All-Star and also with high school. He is helping athletes get recruited. He's helping them find clinics, finding opportunities to kind of enhance their chances of cheering at that next level. He's helping to connect them with coaches, and he is the founder of NextUpCheer, which is exactly that, a resource for athletes and for parents to use to help with that kind of daunting step of the recruiting process. I am so grateful to have him on today, and I cannot wait to learn more about what he does and how he can help us better help our athletes to kind of go throughout that recruiting process. So, welcome to today's show, Les.
Awesome, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, we're really excited to have you on. So, I think that the entire process of, not only applying for colleges, but now adding in that layer of wanting to cheer at the next level, there isn't a ton of resources out there. And so I love what you're doing, but it can be very overwhelming. And so if you don't mind kind of telling us a little bit about that whole process and what athletes should be doing and all that good stuff.
Yeah, so this kind of all started a few years ago. I had a good group of juniors that were extremely talented at the high school team I was coaching at, and a lot of them were college athlete capable, if you will. And at that point, I had been a former college athlete. I had some coaches, I had former teammates that have been there, and I knew a little bit of it. But it was then when I really started digging in and realizing that number one, there wasn't a ton of resources for me as a coach to kind of find. And as social media keeps evolving, a lot of coaches are moving towards TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, stuff like that. And so I started a Coach Less account. I wanted just to be dedicated to where I can, post the athletes in the area. I can then start following all these teams. And when I started following these teams, I realized, okay, they're posting their clinics. So I started reposting those messages. And a lot of the parents of
Yes.
the athletes that I coach were like, hey, that's really helpful. As they started following me. And that was really where that all kind of was rooted in. From there, it was an opportunity for me then as a coach, and at where I'm a coach at Adventure, where we have a lot of athletes come and train, Adventure Athletics, where it's not just a team, it's a training center. So you get kids from Illinois, Wisconsin, they come down there, they work on their stunning and tumbling. And I was starting to get a following of those athletes as I worked with them and reposting their videos. And as I started talking to them, like, hey, so what are you doing for school? And they're like, I'm not sure. I kind of want to go to this school. I was like, all right, well, let me post your reel and let me tag the schools. And when I started tagging the colleges and then the coaches, I started getting messages back like, nice, or who is this athlete? We want to talk to them. And I was like, it's kind of my aha moment. Like, there's definitely an opportunity for us to do a better job as coaches, to connect these athletes, because there's so many programs
Yes.
across the country that I know you've in the past you had some conversations with guests. There's a home for every athlete, I believe. Whether it's D1, D2, NAIA, junior college, the skills and the student athlete aspect. There's totally a ton of opportunities.
Absolutely. And I love what it says about you as a human being because truly, not every coach is willing to pour into their athletes once their time is done. And I think
Yeah.
that that speaks volumes of your character. And I love that about you. I love what you're doing. And I think it's really special. And all those kids who have come in to your world in some way, shape, or form, whether at your high school or through your all-star training, I think they're so lucky. So it's really special. And I think that you're hitting a important piece of tagging schools that I don't think everybody realizes, to when they've got a school in mind that they like, to tag them in some things to make sure that they're kind of waving that flag to look at me. So I love that takeaway for everyone as well.
Yeah, I think too, it's, the coaches, I have some coaches that are, friends that are college coaches, and they're like, I get so many emails, I get so many requests. But when, they're scrolling on their social media for them to, the time they have, they're following these athletes, and for them to like scroll and see it, that's just a lot easier access for them. And then they can like it. And I have seen that work. I've seen once an athlete's on the radar, they'll start getting messages from coaches. They'll start saying, "Hey, come, we got a clinic coming up. Are you signed up?" So it's another avenue besides the traditional emailing. And of course, do email. Of course, do register at their sites and follow the recruitment process and forms. But it's just a really, I think, underutilized and um, I guess, valued, opportunity for
Yeah.
kids.
No, I love that. Okay, so what is your best advice for an athlete who just knows they want to cheer in college? That's all. That's all they've got. Like, hey, I know I want to cheer in college. There's so many opportunities, so many ways to go. What would your advice be to that athlete and parent as that next kind of first step?
Yeah, and that's where I think, for me with Next Up Cheer, I want to create that platform. I look at it as far as what I can offer to the community and athletes and parents. There's plenty of bigger programs that they're going to ask you for thousands of dollars or sign up for this year-long program. I kind of want to look at this and approach it as like, I've done private lessons for tumbling and stunting. And to me, my structure's here. If you want to have the time to work, and with me specifically, we can set that up and structure it around like in prior of those value adds. A more broader answer to your question, if and again, I want to get this information out to the masses, is sit down and have a conversation and narrow down, your student first, student athlete. And so what do you want to study? If you have no idea, I certainly changed my major a few times at Iowa, drove my parents crazy. Like we don't expect you to know at 17, 18 years old, but get an idea. If you got friends, start going to visit them, start getting an idea for the campuses of what you like. And then, having a realistic conversation with mom and dad, sit down and say, what's my GPA? What does it take to get into school first and foremost? Because you might want to go cheer there, but if you don't have the academics, and even if you do have the academics, there's some programs that are might be too tough. They might be too demanding and not set you up for success. So have those conversations. So I usually try to narrow it down to give me a list of top five. Let's figure out top five schools. Let's then look at where are your skills currently, and whether you're a junior, senior, freshman, sophomore, and let's look at what they're posting. Let's look at what athletes are doing. And if a running full is a requirement, you don't have a full, but doesn't mean you can't make the team. It's just you better get in the gym and start working on those skills because they're not going to take it just because they like you or it's a com- it's a competitive spot to be a D1 athlete, to be a college athlete. I think the statistic is less. It's like 7% or less of athletes get an
Wow.
opportunity to move on. And so I think really aligning your skills, aligning what you want to do and your comfort level. I've had some athletes that want to be closer to home. They could have cheered at programs that maybe their talent was better than the one they chose, if you will, but they wanted to be closer to mom and dad, or they wanted to be closer to their family, and that's okay. That's the right choice. And that's the beauty of, I think, what I've learned in my time exploring this is there's a right fit and a right home, and then if you go there, finish your year because you got finish what you started, but
Yeah,
you can go somewhere else.
exactly. No, I love that. I think a lot of kids that are coming into that senior year or junior senior year are feeling so much pressure that the decision they make has to be forever. And I love that you just touched on that as well, coming from your experience, that just go for a year, like if that's your dream, go, and what do you got to lose, and you can change your mind. You're allowed to. And as a child, they're allowed to change their mind 1,000 times. I change my mind all the time, right while I'm in the drive through for Starbucks, I'm changing my mind about what I want to drink. And I mean, I know that's like obviously a lesser thing, but man, we get this one life and you're never supposed to settle. So go after it. And if you don't love it, great, come closer to home or go further away. Or yeah, I think that That's really great advice. And so kind of circling back to that, what's your kind of advice to when this process should begin? When should kids and their parents start having this conversation?
I think it's definitely not a one size fit all. I feel like when you start as a freshman, that's where a lot of kids are like, okay, I'm doing this sport. I made my team, or I'm on this all-star team. I'm starting to get to the higher levels, 4, 5, or 6. This is something I'm passionate about. But definitely, I think junior year is critical. Once you start your junior year, that's where you're really going to start, you know, um, understanding better of what programs are looking for, what they need. A lot of coaches, they only have a certain amount of spots. So if you're a junior, those are the conversations you get to ask with should be asking the coaches are like, hey, if I'm a top girl, if I'm a base, or if I'm a co-ed boy, like, what does your outlook look like? Is it small co-ed? Do I have an opportunity to fit a role here and earn a spot? Because, a lot of times you might have the talent to earn the team, but you're competing against everybody across the country for recruiting spots as well as for tryouts. So you might be talented enough, you might fit the bill for that coach, but there just might be someone that might be better than you or better fit that spot. So you have to have an opportunity to really look and say, maybe what's my backup plan, and as well as what are my kind of top choices where I'm comfortable at. I've had some athletes go and get very tunnel vision, like this is my school, I'm going for it. And they get to the final round of tryouts and they just don't make it. And fortunately, most recently this last year, we had an opportunity to find that athlete a home, and she's thriving. And that's
Good.
so to be able to kind of have that open mind, but understand that this is like a job interview. This is setting you up for success as you grow up. Like down the road, 4 years from now, you're gonna do this all over again, but it's gonna be for where you're working, and I think these are the skills on top of what they're learning in cheerleading that being able to deal with adversity, being able to go through a process, being able to be vulnerable to feedback, being in receiving constructive criticism from coaches is are really the lessons that I try to have those conversations with the athletes that I work with, and just like, hey, enjoy this process because everybody, not everybody is guaranteed a spot at the end, and if and when you are, know that the work is worth it.
Yeah. No, that's really beautiful. I think that's great too. So yeah, it is. It's a lot. As a parent myself with a daughter who I do have a freshman now, and it's do we start? Do we not start? How
Yeah,
much do we do? How many do we visit? It can be a lot. And I love how you're kind of telling everyone to get down to those 5 schools, like help us help you and at least kind of narrow some things down so
yeah,
that and I because kids will come to me as well and in our program and I want to help them and I'm anything you need, I'm here for.
yeah,
We're gonna find all the things. We've of course suggested they get those cheer Instagrams up that where they only follow schools, so they're seeing everything because I love that you're talking about posting clinics because that's hard to find. You might not realize that there's a great clinic to go check out because you don't even know that school exists yet.
right.
So I think it's so great what you're doing by getting that information out in a broader picture so that people can see that and be able to know because if you've never done the process, it's like I said, overwhelming, intimidating, and you don't even know when clinics are, when they start, the fall clinics, the spring clinics, all of those different things. So when it comes to clinics, what's your advice for parents and athletes there?
So a couple things with clinics, for kids, mom and dad, they have enough. They don't want to be driving all over the country. So really it's hard to say, but I always encourage, like, let's be mindful. Like, let's pick the ones that, you can realistically go to. But also if you have the opportunity to go and you maybe have some friends or teammates, like, I think there's something being said for maybe picking one or two outside of your comfort zone to like go experience that culture. So I always try to say, like, when athletes are looking at maybe D1 schools, like maybe go pick a smaller D1 school, or maybe go check out a junior college, there's plenty of those, and just get an idea. So that way you're fully prepared to understand that, yeah, I'm ready for a big campus. I'm ready for that full student athlete life versus some of these other smaller schools will give you a little bit more intimate one-on-one approach, intimate setting of like, all right, class sizes are smaller. I'm getting more familiar with people. So I would encourage when you're looking at camps and clinics, for parents and athletes to just kind of explore those options. Um, I'm a big fan of the combines. There's a lot of bigger programs, USA Cheer, Infinity that run these big combines. Some of these universities are starting to like gather, a lot of teams together. Those are a great opportunity for athletes that maybe don't have a target school to go and meet and have the meet and greets, have the table sessions, and also give that exposure to more schools than just maybe the few that you're maybe, looking at. So if you're questioning like, all right, am I talented enough or, am I going to be able to make these teams? Well, y- allow for yourself again to have that open mind to go to these combines and clinics, go visit all these tables, go talk because you might meet a coach that really just resonates with you and you're like, wait, that's my person. Like I want to go cheer for, them because they seem like they really are invested in their athletes. And I see how much fun those their kids are having on Instagram and their pages. And to me, that's what it's all about is just getting out there and really um having that open mind. So I think the big combines are important. I also when you go to these clinics for athletes, this is your first impression. This is a critical for you to show up and put a smile on your face, put that full performance mode on, and be open to criticism. Because the athletes that are walking around with clipboards, they're the ones deciding if you're going to be the teammate that they want to be with. And I've had some athletes that, you know, have won and earned spots and won some praises and friends and, because of they were themselves, but they were open to feedback. And I've had some athletes that maybe didn't say the right response or were closed minded and the yeah, I know or yeah, I got it. That's not the time or place for those. So be very mindful, like when you're showing up to these, that, be open, be friendly, and be, receptive to anything that whether it's a coach or athlete saying to you.
And you only get one first impression. And it's like that first impression rose. We all want it. So,
Yeah.
you wanna make a great name for yourself and you wanna come across and show your personality, but all of those things, those traits, those character qualities, everybody's amazing. And I think, having college coaches on prior, everybody's amazing. So,
Yeah.
like, you need to stand out in the way that you can handle a challenge, the way that you can be a great teammate, the way that you can take that feedback and apply it and have a conversation and look someone in the eye and be able to shake a hand and say thank you. And because you could be in front of alumni, and I also love just taking every opportunity you can. Maybe it's not a college that you're planning or is on your list, but there's a nearby college clinic that you can attend.
Yeah.
Get that experience, get that exposure, work on those college level skills. And, every little bit helps to kind of help you find where you're supposed to be at the end of the road. So,
Mhm.
yeah, that was great. Another thing, too, that I always tell my kids to do is go right on to NCA and UCA, college nationals. You can print off all those divisions, and it
Yeah.
at least opens your eyes to like, "Oh, I know I wanna be in Texas," or, a lot of our kids coming from New England, they wanna go to warmer weather, so they're looking for down south. They don't wanna stay in the cold. So I tell them that just to go, like, highlight some schools in Texas, all the divisions, and just
Yeah.
kinda go watch them compete, go see where they kinda fell. And that can help narrow it down because there is a college for everyone, and it's just putting in the work to find the right fit for them. Everybody thinks of just those kind of names that you're always hearing in the college scene, and
Yeah.
those are not the only places to cheer.
No.
Or I know that I always hear the myth of you have to have a full. If you have a full, I can't cheer at all in college. Also, completely untrue. And there are some amazing game day experiences that they never compete at all, and there are some hardcore competitive experiences. I try to tell my all-star kids that the feeling of being in a stadium with that many people, cheering is
Yeah.
the same electricity they feel at the summit, like,
Yeah.
or at one of those end of the season kind of or bigger events. So what are some other, I think, myths that you hear, either from athletes or from parents that you're gonna kibosh and say, that's a myth, that's not true?
I think the biggest myth is that I have to do all these things in order to be able to chair in college, and that's not true. I hear that a lot, and I instantly try to say, you know what, at the end of the day, No. As a coach, any coach, if they are, then hey, that's a different conversation for another day. But most of the coaches I meet, they just want the best people and the high character athletes. There's a coach that I've talked to that has extremely talented athletes, and her feedback was, "I can teach talent. I this is what I do, but give me the gym rat, give me the kid that is gonna show up and to open gyms, give me the kid that's gonna work hard, and I'll do the rest." So,
Yes.
I think the notion that, um, as much as, again, it's in the industry as, I'm not a gym owner, but, like, I understand cheerleading is also a business, and I am all for kids doing private lessons. I'm all for them going to tumbling classes 4 or 5 days a week and all the stretching classes. But I also, it's you. If you can't do that, then what are you doing at home? If you don't have access to that, are you stretching at home? Are you on YouTube following workouts? Are you taking advantage if you have team tumbling at practice? So I've seen athletes that um, show a baseline of hard work and show a baseline of wanting to grow and continue to get better. And I've been able to have conversations with coaches and say, hey, this is what you're getting. They're going to work their butts off. They're going to show up, yes sir, yes ma'am, and they're going to be an incredible teammate. And they end up being down the road, in their third or fourth year, like they're the captains, and those are the kids. So to me, I think that is probably, I think, would be the biggest myth is just you don't have to, it's not required or necessary, and it's not going to make you necessarily any better or more recruitable, if you will. Because you're doing all these things, because you have been and had these experiences at, whether it's at the all-star high school level, there's a spot for everybody, but it's more important of who you are as like an athlete and what tangibles do you bring, not only talent wise, because yes, you got to have some talent, but a lot of these college coaches are in the position they are because they can coach talent with the best of them.
Yeah. No, I think that was really great advice. We all love an underdog. We all love the kid that makes no excuses, that might not have the means, but takes advantage of every open gym, every moment they're in the gym for a regular practice, and I've seen it. I've seen one of my best babies went on to cheer at Morehead State and,
Yeah.
finished all 4 years there, and she was a kid that did not have the resources. She had a single mom who wasn't able to do the lessons, the classes, all the extras, but when I tell you that kid, she was grinding with every inch she had, so she was, when everyone else was on a water break, taking advantage to throw another rep of a layout or a full, soaking up all of the coach's kind of knowledge or any kind of advice they had, and she went on to be incredible, and I love to use her. Shout out Allie Minson, my girl. Yes, and it was so special, and same, we traveled, her myself and other teammates to watch her, at her first college nationals and years after, years they won, years they didn't win. But yeah, it's special, and there is a place, and it doesn't matter what you came from. She was from a small town in New Hampshire and a gym that at that time no one had heard of. And yeah, you can really kind of make your own story, and coaches love those qualities more than the skill.
Hmm.
Even when it comes to stunt, that's a whole nother avenue, that
Yeah.
that gives athletes opportunities that maybe they're not a tumbler, but they're an amazing base backspot flyer. Like, that's a whole nother way for them to continue their love of our sport, later on. So I want to have you touch on a couple do's and don'ts. So when it comes to this whole process, what are some do's and don'ts that you feel are really important for parents and athletes to know?
Um, so do engage. I think please start putting yourself out there, and that's uncomfortable for some kids. I have some the most talented athletes that they did not want to post their own cheerleading pages because they didn't want the comments or the feedback or some of the stuff that happens online. So if that's not okay, like if you're not okay with that, that's okay. Let's find another avenue. But coaches want to hear from you. A don't with that would be parents. don't engage. I know Dan from Minnesota had this as, from a coach end of things. And yeah, I've had multiple coaches say, like, I don't want to hear from mom or dad. And I've had some athletes lose some opportunities because mom or dad were being too big of advocates. So let your kid, guide them, but don't direct them. I think too, one of my bigger takeaways is I'm learning from the awesome forum you have and the awesome people you have on the shows was,
Oh,
I
thank you.
agree with like uh, when I'm having a conversation with your son or daughter, if I ask them a question as a coach and they look at you and you respond, then that shows me like from a mental maturity level of maybe where they're at. Maybe they're not fully ready to be on their own because when they do leave the nest and go off
Yeah.
to college, mom's not going to be there. She's not going to be
No.
at practice. So, and that's where I think having that, whether it's someone like me with Next Up Cheer or your coach or your gym owner, your assistant coach, really find someone that you can maybe practice those conversations with.
I love that.
Like in
Yeah.
someone that you can just say, hey, coach, if I go to this clinic, like maybe what are some things I should ask, or hey, coach, what are some things that you see in me as an athlete that you would you like, or what's my brand? And that's one thing I'm big on with athletes is what's your brand. If when you're out of the room and I'm looking at your name on a list, what am I going to think about you as a coach? And and that's talent as well as the intangibles and the personality wise of things. And that's where I also have those conversations, and I encourage parents as well as coaches to start having positive, I call them positive friction conversations in some instances, where it's like, hey, your attitude stinks. And if that coach calls me and you are go there and you wow them and they ask me for feedback, it's my responsibility as a coach, but it's also my brand to let them know, hey, this athlete's awesome. They're gonna be your one of your top talent, but we have some opportunities around the attitude, and I've had those conversations, so that way when if that coach decides to move forward with you, there's no surprises, and that coach doesn't call me like, "Hey, what the heck? This person's causing me some trouble, or we're getting an attitude problem. Why didn't you let me know?" Like, I'm gonna do that, and I encourage coaches and gym owners to be able to set your athletes up for success and have those types of conversation.
Yes, that's great. Okay, so as a coach and, switching my mom hat and putting on my coach hat, and I've got some incredible juniors and seniors in my program who want to cheer at the next level and, have visited some clinics and gone, "Ooh, this wasn't the right fit," or "I really liked this school," or "I visited this campus and I love it." Um, how can I help as a coach? Like, what would your advice be to me? Should I be reaching out to schools for these kids? Should I be encouraging them to reach out for themselves? Yeah, what can I do better to support them as a coach in this role?
I think there's a few things as a coach that I've learned and that I've tried to encourage other coaches is absolutely be, a lot of the coaches have these coaches pages, like XYZ gym or XYZ high school, like start, whether it's my platform or NCA, UCA, anybody, like start posting these clinics because that helps the kids as well. And if you know a kid, and that should be part of their goal. Like if you're setting yearly goals, like, all right, what are your goals this year? Well, I'm a junior, senior. I'm gonna start looking at schools. All right, you should know their top five. And if you know their top five on a water break, hey, what have you done for your college prep? Like that should be part of their performance plan or their growth plans as athletes, and have those conversations regularly. Have you applied for the school? No. Well, what are you waiting for? Applications are open. Get that FAFSA money. Get ahead of this because if you can't get in, then you're wasting your time and the coach's time. So having those conversations, especially at junior senior year, and then in regards to communication, I think it's just a matter of, obviously, you as a coach, you have a ton of network of people that you're comfortable with. But for me, even I start tagging these athletes if they're comfortable. Once they have their cheer accounts, like shout them out, highlight them, highlight their work. A lot of schools do a great job of highlighting. Obviously, hey, our teams are working on jumps, so they're going to post jumps. But I think if you have athletes, a lot of coaches maybe shy away because it's like, oh, I'm showing favoritism. Well, no, this is open for everybody. Like, if you want to cheer in college and you have a cheer account, then I'm gonna post you and I'm gonna shout you
Yeah.
out and I'm gonna that's my responsibility as your coach to it's part of it and I believe that to set you up for that success. Um, and then reaching out, I have reached out for some coaches, but for me, I always approach it as, hey, I am this athlete's coach. I know you probably get reached out from coaches and from parents all the time, but if you're going to, my biggest thing that I've had success with is asking those coaches, what do you want to see from this athlete? If they have met them, what can I work on over the next 3 to 6 months before they go back to another clinic that you want to see specifically? And then I create that action plan with that athlete. So, for example, I had an athlete go to a clinic and just was amazing at all the elites, was showing all, like most of these athletes go, they want to show what they can do. They're on these big, strong boys on the co-ed teams and they're being able to show off with their elites. And I was shocked to get the feedback of, I want to see this athlete. I wasn't shocked, but I guess it was a big takeaway for me was I need to see that she can fly it on everybody, and I need to see that she can fly on my stumblers or my boys that are maybe as strong and do a solid extension, show the right body positions that that she's going to be tight at the air. Because again, I'm not impressed. All my athletes are going to do the elites. I need athletes that's going to be versatile, but also going to be willing to again walk up to anybody. Because when you go to game days, you're not going to be with that same person necessarily. So to have that versatility and be able to get that feedback, um, I think coaches respect that and know that you're not just somebody that's like, my athlete's awesome. You should take him or
Yes.
her. Like, hey, coach, like I want to actually work and develop so that way you're getting, if you choose, the best athlete that you possibly can have.
Yeah. And I think having athletes themselves even ask those questions too. I think that's a great takeaway that when an athlete attends a clinic, whether it is their dream school, not even a school on their radar, getting every bit of feedback from these incredible college coaches as they can. Like what is something that I can be working on or should be working on? What's something you should suggest that I could work, back home in our gym? I always even talk to our kids as we start to branch out more and more and send kids more to amazing universities,
Yeah.
across the country that like they're paving the way for the next generation of kids that look up to them and are going to see how they're going about it. Another kind of takeaway I try to give to my parents is that when we're on the road for all-star events, feel free to stay that extra day and try to tack on just a visit of a school. Just because I think kind of what you said in the beginning that yes, they're like, I want to cheer, but they are not realizing that some campuses are humongous, and
Hmm.
they're busing to different classes, or there's those more intimate where it's a classroom style and your professor knows your name and kind of honing in on that, I think is really important because there's great cheer at both kind of,
Yeah.
like at both kinds of schools and both regions of the country. So I loved that takeaway as well.
Hmm. Yeah, I think, and a lot of coaches too. I mean, some of them have other jobs and they're busy. They have families, but if you give enough notice, to your point, I very rarely say where a coach is give feedback. No, coach wasn't available. Like and that's where I've been on some of those tours as an Iowa alum. Most recently, I was at a clinic and I stayed after, and the coach was able to walk the athletes up to the press box and show them, this is the stadium and this is our facility. And to me as an alumni, like I got goosebumps and I couldn't imagine how these kids feel. So yeah, to be able to have those opportunities. Plus, it gives you another chance to, in that visit to, outside of an environment with 50, 100 plus kids to show who you are and really just, you have to understand that whether it's 1 or 4 years, like you're going to be with your teammates or your coach. My college coach, I still talk to this day.
Yeah.
One of my mentors, and it's somebody that he's been at a lot of the weddings, of the teammates, and it's that becomes family, and that's you got to
Yes.
be understand that like, am I going to want to be around this person for the next 4 years, and and for them vice versa. So
Yeah, and in that clinic atmosphere or going to see a practice, I also always tell my athletes that not everyone coaches the same way I do. Like my coaching style, I'm positive, I'm happy, I'm rainbows, I'm butterflies. Like that is just kind of not that I can't be hard on my kids, but I love really hard and that is my style. And no one else's style is wrong, but there are other coaches that are not lovey-dovey and kind of there for the work and kind of you don't know what you're doing till you're doing it, like, there's been years that kids are crying, "I don't even know if I'm going to camp with the team," they're announcing the team and who's going to camp the day before we leave, and, that's very stressful, and some kids can thrive in that type of environment and can push through, and then some kids, that is not a good fit for. So, I love that you're talking about how important it is that you can feel that connection with this person that's gonna help guide you through these 4 years, hopefully, of your schooling and your education and this kind of walk into adulthood and making sure that you can see yourself in that same environment, and being able to go through it that way. And I think as coaches too, by not only keeping them to us. Again, being from a very small town, we try to bring in coaches from all over, all different people to work with our kids. And we try to, our kids can't always get out, but we want you to come in. Like
Yeah.
we're going to get you there for a tumbling clinic. We're going to get you there for a choreography or a cleanup. We're going to get you there to do some kind of mental toughness or, that growth mindset stuff. But it's important to us as coaches to also open their eyes to different styles of coaching. And that's okay too, to not only be the only way because there's so many great styles that teach different kids differently. So, yeah, small
Ye
town land, bringing those people in is really important. And I think parents too help each other out. Like if you're going to a clinic or you're going to visit a school, grab a friend. We just had a dad doing a visit. We were at camp, at cheer camp and in Pennsylvania. And that's a long drive for us from New Hampshire. And we had a dad offer to bring anybody that wanted to stop at Penn State on the way home. And they did the tour together. And, some kids were like, wow, we love this. And they would have never known or had that opportunity had it not been for that great dad that was just willing to take anybody, instead of just kind of gatekeeping it to his own child. I think it helps the kids with their confidence when they can go with a buddy or with a friend into some of these scary situations. And it's not, dimming your light by having someone else there. It opens that world up for them as well.
I think you're spot on, and you opened another thought that came to mind as you're saying it is, you mentioned you had some previous athletes, alumni, like coaches or parents, like reach out to those athletes and let them know you're coming. And if you can connect, I just recently did it. I know an athlete's going to a clinic, and I reached out to a couple athletes, like, hey, this is so and so. You guys can chat. If you don't want to, that's okay. I'm just gonna at
Yeah.
least try to connect you, and so that way when they show up, that they can maybe have it makes a world of difference. Again, the nerves are all time high at these clinics. If they've got athletes coming to them to say, hey, nice to meet you, we talked, or and that's another part of what I'm trying to do is utilize the amazing athletes we already have, alumni, and have some peer mentorship. I think there's a big opportunity in the sport that's underutilized for these kids, whether it's to be paid or not be paid, to really look back and again pay it forward for the next generation and be able to have a platform, whether it's social media or on one-on-one mentorship, for them to call and say, hey, I know what you're feeling. I was just there, whether you're a freshman last year or I remember 4 years ago, and oh my gosh, I was so nervous, but it's okay, you're gonna do great. Like, that is what for me, again, I am similar in style to you. I'm very, empathetic, I'm very lovey-dovey, as you put it, like, and but also to have those teammates and resources to say, "Well, maybe this coach isn't, however, this is how I've coped with it," or have someone else to lean on as a peer to say, hey, when this is scary, let's be scared together, but we're willing to
Yes.
share those emotions.
Yes. I love that you talked about the alumni and how important it is that us as coaches even reach out to our alumni and get them back
Yeah.
to talk to our kids, And like I think that's wonderful and something we all should be taking advantage of. And maybe those alumni won't be the ones to say like, "Hey, can I come talk to everyone?" But man, how good would they feel if we reached out
Mm,
and said, "Hey, we know you just finished cheering at wherever. We've got some
yeah.
kids at WVU right now. We've got some kids at UCA and but having them come back and kind of share their experience, the highs, the lows, because I think Dan did a great job of touching on it. There's a huge like shock that when they get to this next level that
Mm,
it is hardcore, and just
mhm,
because you're a freshman doesn't mean you're going to make mat, doesn't mean that they're not making changes. And it's less about feelings and more about decisions at the collegiate athletic level,
yeah,
and like, and sometimes that can be really hard for them to hear and take. And they need, like you said, supportive coaches back home, supportive parents back home, supportive teammates back home to kind of help them through it and just, this is how they got to see who's going to stick around. Whenever I get a call from a kid who's nervous that there's a ton of kids, but only 20 make mat or, whatever scenario they're in. And I'm always like, this is what they're trying to do. They're trying to weed out the people who really want to be there. The
Mm.
kids that are gonna show those character qualities that you're not going to give up. You're not going to make excuses. You're going to get in the gym. You're going to work hard and your time will come. And it's okay if it's not freshman year,
Yeah.
and I think that's another piece that maybe a lot of freshmen don't always realize that it might take a minute to make that spot on that,
Mhm.
you know, that team. But as coaches, they're watching. They're watching the process. They're watching these kids. They're seeing who can handle it. And we even have a freshman who they've got homework. And even in like the first couple weeks of homework, she's
Yeah.
like, yeah, like 6 kids quit or because they didn't want to do the homework and
Right.
weren't doing the required mile run or the lifting that, that was put into their group to do over the summer or the reps that they were supposed to go find away outdoors in a gym. The coach didn't care, getting those reps in. And that's another piece too for us as coaches. I know we've tried to start implementing some homework to nothing crazy, but some things to engage our athletes that mom and dad can't necessarily do for them. Like a lot of times as they're on our senior team, mom and dad can check and say, oh, well, you had to wear pink to practice today, or you have to be here by this time, or the homework aspect. We've tried to educate our parents that it's not to punish your child, it's not to be mean, it's not to add extra, but if they really want to cheer at that next level, homework and in off season or when you're home on break or it's going to be something that your athlete's going to need to be able to handle and
Yeah.
turn in to kind of remain on the team.
Yeah, 100%. And I think too, as at Venture, that's we get a lot of athletes that come home and they train there, and I get to see the homework and get to check in, make sure they're doing it, and as they struggle through it, be that voice of encouragement. But the other part of that too that I think you could even do at the high school level for high school coaches or officer coaches is accountability, but like partners, and
Yes.
make sure that have somebody, whether it's your probably shouldn't be your friend. I'd encourage it not to be, but have
Yep.
somebody that has a like-minded goal as you. And if you're not in the gym, you're gonna get that text like, "Hey, where you at?" That's where when I mentioned 3 years ago, these athletes, when they started really digging in and going to these open gyms, it's special to watch when you start seeing the kids make progress and work together. I mean, there were times where we were flashing the lights, like, gotta go, you gotta get out of here. Like, we got places to be, you got curfew, like, so find that like-minded person in the gym or at your high school and go to open gyms. Or if you don't have it, go to each other's places, be safe, obviously, don't, and support each other. Go to the weight room, hold each other accountable, because that's was what you're gonna have when you go to that next level and make your college team. And now you already have behaviors in place that are gonna set you up for success and keep you aligned with the teammates that are already there. The teammates, the kids that transfer, they might be the most talented, but because they were willing to put in the work ethic and we're used to, all right, hey coach, we're done with practice. What are you doing? I'm like, what do you mean I'm doing? I'm going home. Well, can we go to the gym? Like, well, like, well, yeah, okay, fine. We'll go for 2 hours, and
Yeah.
then to get those reps in, like, one of my athletes, he's at Alabama. I'll shout him out, John. He's a junior out there. He just got ESPN just did a really cool spotlight of him tumbling across the end zone, and
I
he
love
just
that.
sent me a video of his national championship ring.
Oh,
He had this phrase that we used that said every time we were going through practice, he said, "Look, all right, let's put in the numbers." It's all about putting the numbers. The more that you
yes.
can do that. I don't care how no talent, all the talent, you're gonna get better one way or another.
Yeah, an awesome takeaway. I'm going to use that at the gym now. Putting in those numbers. That's really good. Okay, so just kind of switching gears, if you were going to give some advice to maybe a new college coach that has got a more of a startup program and hoping to get kids in the door and recruit them in some way, what would your advice be to that college coach to kind of help them grow throughout this process as well?
The more that you could be active on Instagram specifically, and social media, the better. I think it's one of those things where if you can tell the who, what, why about your program and give yourself a voice and start filming your open gyms, the good and the bad. Like give these athletes a picture into what does practice look like. I love when teams do the day in the life and the athletes get the opportunity to take over Instagram. Like
Yes.
let these kids see like, oh, that looks fun. Like, hey, they're going to class, they're going to the gym. Like we'll give them a picture of like what does it look like to be on campus. And if you're a smaller school, some kids will love that. If you're a bigger school, like that sets them up for exposure that, behind the scenes. And I think, for me, the one thing I learned, and obviously within reason, but there's the more vulnerable and the more real and authentic we can be as coaches, I firmly believe that you're going to have a better morale, you're going to have a better team camaraderie, you're going to have a better overall uh, just group of kids that because they know who you are, they know what you're about, and I think obviously, to be able to share the experiences with these athletes, like me being a former Iowa cheerleader, like I was open about, I will tell anybody. The only reason I graduated is because I was a cheerleader. I was held to study hours. Those study hours that you hate right now as a freshman, those are what is going to set you up for success because it made me go. It made me maintain a GPA that I wanted to perform, and that's okay. I'm okay to admit that. It doesn't
Yeah.
make me less than. It doesn't make me,
No.
not smart or whatever. But like, utilize the resources that you have, and I think coaches in turn show those resources. If you have tutor sessions, if you have study hours, if you have food stipends, no, you're not giving out full ride scholarships, but those are the little things. And I think, unfortunately, where we're at as a sport, hopefully in the next 4 years or 8 years, or hopefully sooner, we grow and we can have NIL deals and things where, these athletes can start being treated like the athletes they are. But until then, I was just recently visiting, a school and like they get free tanning before games. That's cool, and they
Yeah.
love that. It's an
Yeah.
opportunity for them to go tan, and then it's also a break for them. They had the athlete had a tough day, and it's like I just want to go have like 10-15 minutes, and then go back throughout the day. So
Yep.
market those things that you have to the high school kids.
Yeah, that's great advice for sure. Okay, so just again, switching gears, another layer. I know that you're really passionate about mental health. So I just wanted to have you touch base on that just real quick about, kind of your advice to athletes kind of going through the trenches, maybe, and
Yeah.
how important mental health is, and any kind of takeaways you can give them in that regard.
Yeah, so it's okay to not be okay, first and foremost. I share with athletes because this sport is tough. This is a sport that demands or we work towards perfection, and it's not real. It's not realistic. And again, I know Dan said it was subjective, but like kids don't get that. And I think we as a sport gets, unfortunately parents contribute to it. You gotta look the part, if you will, as a cheerleader, and the things that these kids outside of the sport have to go with on top of putting the pressures. Like I feel like we as coaches, as parents, as gym owners, we have to do a better job of either creating resources for kids to feel comfortable to talk to, encouraging open communication with their teammates, or one big thing that I have athletes do individually or teams that I've coached, we've had journals. So we've had them maybe journal before practice. Write down your thoughts. One year we were in a slump and I took this best practice. I forget what coach it was, but I had them write down everything that was giving them anxiety and they were stressed about on a piece of paper. And at the end of that workshop, like 30 minutes, they stood up. I put a shredder on the table and I had them walk up and they put it into the shredder. And I said, now it's gone.
Yep.
Now,
Oh, in New Hampshire, we have bonfires, so we
yeah,
light those babies on fire.
I
So,
love
yeah,
that.
no, I love it, especially their fears before a big event and just kinda letting go. I love that you're highlighting the importance of, more than just the skills, the overall athlete. It's so important that we're working to develop them and help them navigate through those hard times that they're not always willing to admit that they are so worried or so stressed or so, anxiety ridden over certain things. So I love that you're that kind of coach who cares beyond just the X's and O's and wants to help them. Not only again, like in their time with you, but their time when you give them those wings. We talk a lot in our gym about roots and wings. Like I want them to plant some great roots in our program and then our community and have that community of Northern Lights. But then I want them to have those wings to go fly and know that they can always come home. Like they're going to always count on us still, even after they put the uniform up, that we still, and even how you spoke of your coach at, with your college team
Mhm.
being at weddings. I mean, that is
Yeah.
my indicator of success. We've won some really great things in my career, and it's never been about that. It's truly always been about if they want to come see me when they're home on break, if they're calling me and telling me something cool that happened with their new cheer team, or, like that is when I'm like, oh, okay, I did my job. They knew that I cared about them as a human being and less as just a Northern Lights cheerleader. So
Well,
yeah.
I think that you hit the nail on the head for me. It's funny you bring it up. That's the season I'm in right now. With this next up cheer, I made a decision last year to step away from high school coaching. I'm still working open gyms at, Venture Athletics, but I wanted to give some time back to me. And part of that was, and I'm posting my journey is I'm getting to go to these college schools. So I've been to Kentucky, I've been to Ames, I've been to Iowa. My experience to be able to go to these, see them in action at these schools. Also too, though, I do have to shout out, like, Coach Ryan invited me into practice. It was alumni weekend at Kentucky, and for me, most recently, I was like walking, and I was like, this is like Yankee Stadium. Like, holy cow! Like,
Yeah.
I've only seen this on social media. I've never been here. First time here, and to be able to watch a practice and to see the best of the best. And the way these kids were supporting each other, and the handful of athletes that have trained up here with me, and then I've got 2 athletes that are freshmen that just made it, and to
Oh,
kinda see
wow.
them, yeah, it was really exciting, and I think that was, another point for athletes, like, and that's a conversation that I most recently had this group of kids is, um, you know, when you talk about your relationship with your coach, that, "Oh, you have your favorites and all this," and, for me, my response back is to everybody's special. You're always gonna be a family, but the athletes that check in on your coach, ask your coach when they show up to the gym or high school, they got stuff going on. And I got to the point where, I was walking in the gym and, "Hey, coach, how are you?" And I was open the communication and say, "I had a terrible day,
Yeah.
guys. I'm not gonna lie to you. I came straight from work to practice. I had a terrible day. So if I'm off for the first 15 minutes, this is why. But I also need you guys to hype me up and make me, let's make these next 2 hours, let's turn that day around, because just because I had a bad day doesn't mean I have to have a bad evening." And
Yeah.
that made big strides. So I encourage athletes to have those conversations even with mom or dad. If mom, picks you up and you're stressed and that you maybe don't get the response, or dad, from them that you want, maybe they're not in the right headspace to be able to give you that feedback or just listen. And I think that's
Yes.
crucial, going back to the mental health, is sometimes that we as coaches and parents are quick to want to fix and comfort. And so a lot of times if I have an athlete reach out, because I'm fortunate enough to still have some college kids that are going through some growing pains, and they call, and I'll say, "Okay, now do you want me to just listen so you can vent, or do you want me to give you my coaching?" And sometimes they're like, "Hey, coach, you just listen." And then I'll
Yes.
just let them talk and just let them vent. And then when they're done, I'll be like, "Okay, you feel better?" And yeah, I do. And then I'll always ask, because it's my it's who I am as a coach. Like, "All right, can I now coach you?" And they're like, "No, you can't." I'm
Yeah.
like, "All right, well, go be great, and we'll talk
Yeah.
again." So
Yep. And just normalizing that as coaches that we're human too. I say the same things to gym owners and coaches, to even to their parents, but also to your athletes. You have to be vulnerable and able to admit that we make mistakes too. And that's all part of life. We're supposed to mess up. And these kids in a sport that's perfectionist based, and they think they can never mess up, and like
yeah,
just reminding them that it's normal to have a bad day and like we can all lean on each other. And I love that you You admit that. That was
Yeah.
really great and really special.
The biggest failures that I in life have been the biggest blessing and lessons for me. That's such a kind of a cliche thing, like, peaks and valleys and all of that, but I mean, you only learn that with time and age. At that age, you're like, "No, it's all right. I gotta be, I'm type A, I gotta get this figured out." No, you don't. You're gonna learn more from the things that and I also too, I love that, a no maybe doesn't mean no, maybe it's not now, or it's a redirection to a better yes. So
Yes.
I always try
Yes.
to have, have those conversations that there's always a why. There's always a reason that if you're not getting the skill that you want to get right away, then you got to put in the work, put in the numbers, and it's not no, you're never going to get it. It's just not right now. You got to go through the process, and it's going to be ups and downs, but that's life, and that's what set me up for the success that I've had in the corporate world. And to be able to be the coach that I have is just realizing and trying to share again, humanize because these athletes in the sport we are like we work so hard to perfection to like, hey, no, this we're gonna have some bad times. We're gonna have some times where nothing clicks, stunts are falling. We're not gonna win every competition. But at the end of the day, if you can look back and enjoy that process, that's what this is about. And I always say I personally I don't have any national championships. I don't have any rings. But at the end of the day, it's the phone calls, like you said. I love that about you and your program. Like it's the kids that check in and say, "Hey, coach, I saw your post. This looks awesome. I'm glad you're doing great." Or, can you come down to a game? And that's where
Yeah.
I'm at. It's when you invite me down, I'm gonna make the time to come see you and put your pin on my shirt and be your big fan.
Yeah.
So
No, of course, and supporting them in that way. Before we got on this call, I was searching for dresses because I'm officiating for the first time ever, but it's one of my kids that was with me day one of this program 20 years ago. And she's getting married, and I'm going to marry her and her, husband, which is just wild. But that is a highlight of my whole life, that like I have that kind of impact. And it's so obvious that you are a coach of impact, of relationship, of, beyond just the floor, of the impact that you can have on and off of the mat, and it's amazing. And the kids that you coach or have relationships with are so incredibly lucky. Um, I love what you're doing. I can't wait to reach out now on behalf of my girls, to have
yeah.
help in this next step. You're doing something really great for the industry as a whole. And so how do people get in touch with you?
Yeah, so right now I working on all platforms, but mainly Instagram, at Coach Les underscore or Next Up Cheer. I've already had some coaches DM me and send me some information. And then it's from parents on a one-on-one level. Like again, for me, I'm looking at this as I'm learning. So any coaches that have feedback, any parents that have gone through this that want to share, hey coach, this is what I'm struggling with. Like I'm open to grow this to be whatever it organically can turn into. With the mission in mind is using, you know, my connections, using my coaching style and abilities to just continue to give athletes that want it the opportunity to hopefully find their homes and be able to have the memories that I have as a former college cheerleader, and that have got to see so many athletes go on and thrive and enjoy because I mean, that's what we're doing this for, right? I mean,
Yeah,
yeah, that's what you're putting all that hard work in for, and you're not going to be a professional cheerleader. Although I know we're working on that as a
I
sport,
know. I know.
which is exciting. But like, these are going to be, your memories from the games or from comps, and then eventually, again, I got friends that I just went to a game with 20 years later. These are going to be your lifelong friends and family. So, if I can,
And sport only
yeah,
lasts so long, and I
yeah,
think that we forget about that, like, my body, number 1, couldn't do what it used to do, and even when you're able to coach one day, it's not the same as being on the floor,
yeah.
Like, we're there guiding, and we're just kinda trying to help them navigate their way and chase their dreams and, reach their goals, but there is nothing like playing the sport, or being in it, whatever it was that you played as a kid or as a child, and it's gone, and it's a sad thing to think about, at
Yeah.
40 something years old that I won't ever cheer again. Maybe I'll go throw a cartwheel in my backyard. But it is so cherishing that time and getting as much love of your sport as you can. So if you have the opportunity to cheer beyond high school, man, do it because eventually you can't. So if you, and then beyond college, if you have a way to still be involved in this sport, in this industry and give back, do it.
Yeah.
I think that's a really important kind of storyline as well, to
Hmm.
just enjoy that time and cherish your time because it will be over. And the last time that those cheer shoes get put up or, it's a really sad day. It's something that you've done a lot of your life
Yeah.
just doing. So taking advantage of the opportunity to cheer at the next level. Don't miss that chance, because there
Don't.
is a school for everyone.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's, for me, it's where I'm at with this platform. I think is, I love to still be in the gym, and I'll still do a QP with the best of them. That's one thing I
Woo!
love. I always, my goal is to be able to get to 50, and and do that, and I still have the kids come back and challenge me, from the colleges, and now they're starting to beat me, which I'm like, hey, it's okay, like
Yeah.
I can. I'm glad you're beating me, because if you're not, then I'm gonna have to do some more coaching, but yeah, I mean, it
Yeah.
it doesn't last forever, and these are, when you look back, like, the memories that are gonna last a lifetime for you.
100%. Yeah. Well, thank you again for coming on. You have given us so much great information that everyone listening, again, a coach, a athlete, a parent can all have wonderful takeaways that they can apply now and get started on. And yeah, guys, get in touch with Coach Les. He's definitely knows what he's doing and is going to be able to help you and guide you through those steps, however little or a lot you need him, it sounds like. And like I said, I'm really excited to be in touch with you off air to kind of hear more about the ways that I can better support my own athletes in the gym and my own child. So as we go through this process, I've got a freshman and then I've got an eighth grader and a seventh grader. So
I
we're
love
up to the
that.
first one up at bat. And we've
Yeah.
got, she'll be our guinea pig to kind of make it easier for the other two.
Well, I'm
But
happy. Yeah, I'm happy to help. And, likewise, I think what you're doing here, I mean, there's a lot of, individuals that are a huge impact on the sport, that have the resources and the connections. And I'm a fan. And so
oh,
whoever's in
thank
my
you.
circle of Next Up Cheer, Coach Last World, will like and follow. And I'm
Yay.
excited to just
Yeah.
be, and grateful to be able to have the opportunity to talk with all things cheer with you. I mean, be able to see people like Kyle and Dan and Jeff Benson, the people you've had on, are people I've looked up to. So I'm
Yes.
really, really grateful, really thankful to, be included in that, and to be able to have this conversation today.
And I promise you, there's someone out there that you're inspiring right now, just with our conversation today. So thank you for giving back to the industry in this way and giving back to the cheer community and spreading so much goodness. Yeah, you're definitely a light in this world, Les. It's obvious. I'm so grateful to now call you my friend. And again,
Likewise.
thank you so much for taking the time. And we'll see everybody on the next episode of Here for Cheer.
Awesome. Thank you.